When your mother pays $8,000 a month for luxury care but dies alone, covered in bed sores, how do you prove it wasn't just old age? It was murder by neglect. But what the family discovered in room 237 would shock even me. In my 42 years on the bench, I've seen families torn apart by greed, betrayal, and negligence. But the case of Thompson versus Golden Years Manor haunts me still, not because of the verdict, but because of how a place that promised dignity in your golden years became a house of horrors, hidden behind marble lobbies and fresh flowers. Margaret Thompson was 78 when her daughter Patricia drove her to Golden Years Manor for the last time. The brochures promised 5-star accommodations for your loved ones, complete with gourmet meals, daily activities, and round-the-clock medical care. The monthly fee was $8,000, more than most people's salaries. But Patricia wanted the best for her mother. "Your Honor," Patricia testified, her voice steady despite obvious pain, "I thought I was giving my mother a palace. The tour was perfect. Beautiful rooms, smiling staff, residents playing chess in the sunroom. I never imagined I was signing her death warrant." Margaret had been a retired librarian, sharp as a tack despite her arthritis and mild diabetes. She could still discuss philosophy, beat anyone at crossword puzzles, and never missed her weekly phone call with her granddaughter. Independent, dignified, and trusting. Exactly the kind of resident Golden Years Manor claimed to cherish. But the most horrifying evidence was still coming. Dr. Amanda Foster, the state health inspector, took the stand with photos that made several jurors gasp. Mrs. Thompson was found in a bed that hadn't been changed in days. Stage 4 bed sores covered her back and hips. Her diabetes medication chart showed missed doses for weeks. She had lost 37 pounds in her final 2 months. The defense attorney, representing Golden Years Manor, objected repeatedly, but the photographs spoke louder than any legal maneuvering. Margaret Thompson, who'd entered the facility walking and talking, had died alone, malnourished, and in agony. That's when the pattern became crystal clear. Patricia's son, Michael Thompson, a 35-year-old physical therapist, testified about his grandmother's rapid decline. "She went from greeting me at the door to not recognizing my voice in 8 weeks. When I asked the staff about her confusion, they said it was normal aging. When I asked about her weight loss, they said she was just picky about food." Michael's professional training made him suspicious early. "I work with elderly patients daily. What I saw wasn't normal aging, it was systematic neglect. But every time I raised concerns, the staff made me feel like an overprotective grandson who didn't understand medical care." The prosecution, led by District Attorney Rebecca Martinez, presented the facility's own records. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Golden Years Manor billed the Thompson family $24,000 for Margaret's final 3 months. Let me show you what that money actually bought." Subscribe now. You won't believe what was happening behind closed doors. The daily care logs revealed a shocking truth. Margaret's care had been falsified for months. Nurse signatures on medication charts for days when those nurses weren't even working. Meal records showing she'd eaten full portions when the kitchen logs proved her meals were never delivered. Bath schedules marking her as clean when she hadn't been moved from her bed in days. Former employee Janet Miller, a licensed practical nurse who'd worked at Golden Years for 3 years, became the star witness. "I was fired for refusing to falsify care logs," she testified, her hands shaking. Margaret Thompson wasn't the only one. "We had 27 residents in our wing, but only 3 certified nurses for all 3 shifts. It was impossible to give proper care." District Attorney Martinez pressed deeper. "Ms. Miller, what did you observe specifically about Mrs. Thompson's care?" "She was calling for help constantly, begging for water, asking to be turned so her sores wouldn't hurt. The overnight staff would turn off her call button and tell her to stop bothering them." Janet wiped away tears. "I tried to help her whenever I could, but I was covering too many patients. When I reported the conditions, I was told to mind my own business or find another job." The evidence was right there, and no one wanted to see it. The facility's administrator, Robert Harrison, testified that Golden Years Manor met all state requirements. A polished man in his 50s, he spoke in corporate language about challenging elderly residents and medical complications beyond our control. But when Martinez presented the financial records, his composure cracked. "Mr. Harrison, your facility collected $312,000 from families last month alone. How many licensed nurses were on your payroll?" We had adequate staffing according to state minimums."
State minimums, Mr. Harrison, require 1 nurse per 15 residents. You had 1 nurse per 37 residents. Were you aware this violated both state law and your own advertising promises? The smoking gun came from the facility's own security cameras. Patricia had demanded access through a court order, and what they revealed was damning. Hours of footage showing Margaret calling for help with no response. Staff members walking past her room while she lay in obvious distress. Meals delivered to her bedside table, but never actually given to her because she couldn't reach them alone. Then came the testimony that changed everything. Dr. Stephen Walsh, Margaret's former primary care physician, testified about the facility's deception. I was told Mrs. Thompson was thriving, participating in activities, eating well. When I requested to examine her during month 2, I was told she'd refused the visit. I later learned she'd been begging to see a doctor for weeks. Patricia's voice broke as she described her final visit. I was traveling for work, so I couldn't visit for 10 days. When I came back, I didn't recognize my own mother. She was skeletal, confused, and begging me to take her home. She kept saying, "They won't feed me. They won't clean me. They pretend I'm not here." "What did you do?" Martinez asked. "I demanded to speak with the director immediately. He assured me she was just having a difficult adjustment period, that moving her again would be more traumatic. He convinced me to give it another week." Patricia's guilt was palpable. "I left her there because I trusted experts over my own eyes. 3 days later, she was dead." Hit that like button if you believe negligence should be treated as murder. The autopsy revealed the full scope of the neglect. Dr. Patricia Chen, the medical examiner, testified that Margaret had died from sepsis caused by infected bed sores, complicated by severe dehydration and medication withdrawal. These conditions develop over weeks, not days. Mrs. Thompson died slowly, in pain, from completely preventable complications. But the most damning evidence came from the financial audit. Forensic accountant David Kim testified about Golden Years Manor's business model. They operated at 127% capacity by billing for services never provided. Families paid premium prices for luxury care, while residents received less attention than state minimum facilities. "How is that possible?" I asked. They created elaborate documentation systems showing care that never happened. Medication logs, activity participation, meal records, all falsified. They had an entire department dedicated to creating fake documentation for billing purposes. The final revelation no one expected. Margaret's roommate, 81-year-old Helen Santos, testified via video link from her new facility. Her words cut through every corporate excuse. "Margaret begged me to tell her daughter what was happening, but I was too scared. They threatened to take away our call privileges if we complained. We watched each other disappear, one by one." Helen described a systematic pattern. Residents who complained were isolated. Families were told their loved ones were confused or difficult, and staff were trained to blame families for being unrealistic about aging. They told us we were lucky to be there, that we should be grateful, but we were paying to die slowly. The facility's night supervisor, Maria Santos, had worked there for 8 years. Her testimony revealed the culture of neglect from the inside. Management told us to prioritize residents whose families frequently visited. If someone rarely had visitors, like Mrs. Thompson toward the end, they got minimal care. We were explicitly told not to waste resources on residents who wouldn't complain. Don't forget to subscribe. This ending will restore your faith and justice. During my sentencing of the facility's management, I looked at Robert Harrison and saw not just a negligent administrator, but a representation of an industry that profits from society's most vulnerable members. Mr. Harrison, you created a business model based on betraying families in their most trusting moments. You took their money, their hope, and their loved ones' final years. The jury awarded the Thompson family $3.2 million in damages,
But more importantly, their verdict forced Golden Years Manor into bankruptcy. The facility was shut down, its license permanently revoked. Harrison received 5 years for fraud and negligent homicide, while 3 supervisors received lesser sentences. Share this story with someone who has aging parents. They need to know. Patricia used her settlement to establish the Margaret Thompson Foundation, providing free advocacy for nursing home residents. She partnered with surprise inspection teams, creating a system where facilities never knew when real oversight might arrive. Ring that notification bell for more stories where families fight back and win. The ripple effects extended far beyond one facility. The state implemented surprise inspections, mandatory family access to security footage, and criminal penalties for falsifying care records. Margaret's death became the catalyst for protecting thousands of other vulnerable residents. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Patricia. "Your Honor, thank you for seeing my mother as a person, not just another case number. This trial didn't just give us justice, it gave meaning to her suffering." She'd also started visiting other families fighting similar battles, turning her loss into a lifeline for others. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever worried about your own parents' future care, smash that subscribe button. Your support helps us expose the truth and protect the people who protected us our whole lives. The Thompson case taught me that sometimes the most elegant buildings hide the ugliest truths. But it also proved that when families refuse to accept that's just how things are, they can change an entire system. Margaret Thompson's voice, silenced by neglect, became louder in death than it ever was in life. Remember, your parents' dignity isn't negotiable, their comfort isn't optional, and your advocacy might be their only protection.